When I was 9 years old, my dad got his first solo pastor call to Greenwood, South Carolina. There was a church there on the outskirts of town, and we were called there. As I said, I was 9, and across the highway from the church and the church manse, there was a low-income housing community. You might call it an inner-city neighborhood. I call it low-income housing. And we were a blessed family. We had a trampoline at that point in my childhood. And as an outreach, my brothers and I, and with my parents, of course, went to meet the folks in this low-income housing development, and invited the families to visit the church. We invited the kids to come jump on our trampoline with us, and we all jumped on the trampoline together on several occasions and had a wonderful time. And of course, when you jump on the trampoline for a long time, eventually children will need to use a restroom. So they would often ask, "Can we use your guys' bathroom?" And we'd say, "Of course. What's hospitality all about? Bathrooms inside." But one specific trampoline event happened right around my birthday. And I received from all of my relatives that lived too far away to come and give me toys, I received money. And for this birthday, from all my relatives, who apparently liked me a very great deal, I received $70. My 10th birthday, that's a fortune. And I had it, I'd taken it out of the cards, and I made a nice little neat stack. All the presidents' faces were looking in the right direction. I had it all ready, and I had it set out there on my dresser. And you had to walk past my bedroom to get to the bathroom. And one of those neighborhood kids, I have no idea who, one of those neighborhood kids on their way to the bathroom glanced into my bedroom and saw that nice, neat stack of dead presidents. And just couldn't resist. Aha! My $70 gone. Disappeared. You say, "Hey, who took my $70? Ooh. Of course nobody knew. Of course nobody owned up to it. And of course I lost my money. And the question is, what did I do wrong to deserve that? Nothing. I was being friendly, sharing my trampoline, and sharing my bathroom. So trusting that I left my bedroom door open. And I was greatly punished for that by losing the most money I'd ever seen in one place in my life. And that needs to be our focus today as we look at what Daniel is going through. Sometimes it looks like nice guys finish last. We left off our reading with Daniel thrown into a lion's den for doing nothing worse than a good job and praying. Sometimes it looks like nice guys finish last. Let's turn once again to Daniel chapter 6 and pick up with verse 19 and get the rest of the story. Find out what happened. This is verse 19 and continuing. Daniel chapter 6. Then, at break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king, I have done no harm." Then the king was exceedingly glad, and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, "Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. There ends the rest of the story. Many of you know that really just a year, maybe half a year after I got out of college, I received what I considered to be my dream job at that point. Many of you know this about me. I was a high school history and drama teacher, public speaking teacher. I absolutely loved it. Some of my students are in this very room. I had a wonderful time teaching. I absolutely loved it. I was there for 2 years. And during the course, this is a small Christian high school, and during the course of my tenure there, my 2 years there, I was stricken by a life-altering digestive disease called ulcerative colitis. The medication of which cost, at that point, between $600 and $800 a month, which I had no health insurance. And of course, once you get sick, you can't get any. At least that's the way it was back then. And because of that terrible illness, I had to resign from the school. I had to resign and go find a different job that paid differently so that I could afford my medicine just to keep me alive. And apparently my departure from the school embarrassed the administration of that school. They were embarrassed because they couldn't provide health insurance. They were embarrassed because they couldn't keep me. They were embarrassed because they couldn't take care of me. And I hope this isn't true. But since then, I have learned and heard through the grapevine that some of the members of the administration of that school, instead of admitting that I had to leave for lack of health insurance, told people that I was dismissed. I was fired for being unsatisfactory. Me! Unsatisfactory. I have no idea if that's true. I hope it's not true. But that hurts. The idea that all I was doing was my best and people would lie about me to make themselves look better. It hurts when people lie behind our backs, doesn't it? It hurts when people talk behind our back. And that's our first point as we dive into Daniel chapter 6. And it's a short one. Sneaks exist. Point 1, sneaky people exist. Verses 1 through 3, what's Daniel doing? His job. He's been elevated to one of the top 3 officials in the land. He's doing his job. He's set over 120 satraps. These are divisional, these are regional governors. And their main job is to collect revenue and run the kingdom. It's a division of labor so that, as it says here, the monarch, the king, Darius, would suffer no loss. He would lose no revenue. His reputation would be protected because his kingdom is running smoothly. And Daniel has consistently been satisfactory. He's shown satisfactory work, hasn't he? He's been faithful. We get the language here that he has an excellent spirit in him, which I would say described me as a teacher. I had an excellent spirit, I think. And Darius, the king, this conquering, the Median and Persian Empire, has conquered Babylon. And Darius, this new ruler, has noticed so much. He's so pleased with how satisfactory Daniel is that he wants to promote him. Promote him to being the second highest in the kingdom, second only to the king himself. Which happened to me also. Not quite that fancy at all, but I was offered a promotion before I had to resign from the school, which is what tells me that I was being satisfactory. They wanted me to take on more duties. They wanted me to be something they called lead teacher, which meant I would lead more field trips and would have more duties after school. Of course, it came with no extra pay, but they wanted to promote me. which is what tells me I was at least in some way satisfactory before I left. And that's what Daniel's doing here. He's being satisfactory. They want to promote him, at least Darius does. But here's where the sneaks come in. They're jealous. Verses 4 through 5, here's this foreigner, this exile from Judah getting promoted. What? He's being exemplary. What? He's getting rewards. What? They're jealous and they want to get rid of him. They want to hurt him. They want to advance themselves on his injured body. So they look for a way to blame him, but they can't. They find that he's faithful. They find that he works hard. They find that he's satisfactory. And they gather together and talk behind his back and determine that he's so faithful, so satisfactory, that the only way they can hurt him is through his faith. They say, we're going to have to use his trust of his God against him. That's the only way we can get him, because that's the only thing he does that we can find any criticism of. They're going to use his obedience to God to trip him up. They say his faith we can use to make him unsatisfactory. And then in verses 6 and 7, they get sneaky. Not only have they, talked amongst themselves behind his back, they go again behind his back to the ruler. And they lie. They go to Darius and talk him into making this law. For 30 days, nobody's allowed to make any petition of a god or man other than to Darius, which I don't know about you, but I think that sounds impossible to enforce. Hey, would you hand me my water? How dare you, lion's den. That's impossible to enforce, but they don't care. They've only got one target. They want to get Daniel. That's all they care about. And they lie, don't they? They lie. They say all the officials, the prefects and the satraps have come together to make this plan, to make Darius look better. Did Daniel agree to this? Was he in their secret meeting? No. But Darius doesn't know. And he says, yeah, I like to sound fancy. Let's do it. Let's put the stamp on that one. Let's make this law. I don't know if you've done any shopping at Kroger, the grocery store here in town. There's a space in front of the building at Kroger. There's like it's striped out. I think it's like orange or yellow lines, and it actually says fire lane. There's no parking there. You have to leave that space open in case the building suddenly combusts, so that the fire truck can get there. Do people ever park in the fire lane? All the time. What are they parking there for? Because they're fire department? No. What are they there for? Oh, I just got to grab something from the pharmacy. Oh, I just need to get a movie out of Redbox. Oh, I just need to grab one quick item. I'm just here for a couple of apples. So they park in the fire lane, which tells me that the fire lane is not a rule. It's not a law of the Mede and Persian. It is a suggestion. You can park there so long as you say you can. You have the authority to tell yourself where to park. And that's not the kind of law we're dealing with here. This isn't a fire lane suggestion. This is the law of the Medes and Persians, which is referred to here as a law that cannot be changed or altered. This is serious business. A law that cannot be changed or altered. It's intended to be the thing, the law that everyone notices. And it's supposed to show how wise and forward-thinking and inscrutable the monarch is. It's a law code intended to make the monarch look infallible. So you should be really careful before you set a law into place, right? If you're making a rule that you know you're going to have to follow as well as everybody else, should you not be careful what rule you make? Absolutely. But Darius says, yeah, let's do it. Sounds good. 30 days. What could 30 days hurt? 30 days. If you park in the fire lane, you're thrown to the lions. 30 days. What could it hurt? So he puts the law in force. He does it. And we need to understand as we move forward that sneaky people exist. And we need to get used to the fact that there are going to be people who behind your back say things about you that are not true. I have evidence that I was not unsatisfactory as a teacher. I know I didn't get fired. I know why I had to leave. And I know that I was working hard before I left, and I know that at least some of my students were learning something. I know it. I have evidence. But know today that all it may take for you to make enemies is for you to do your best. All it may take is you putting a little effort in, and people aren't going to like you. So we have to find a defense against liars here. We need to find a defense as we dive deeper and deeper into this. We need to find a way to protect ourselves, insulate ourselves from these liars. And that's our second point today. A possible defense. A possible defense is a consistent life. A possible defense against liars is a consistent life. Now, notice how it's phrased here in verse 10. Daniel knew. Once he knew about the law, what does he do? He changes nothing. It tells us he doesn't go to pray to flout the law. He's not trying to say, look, I'd park in the fire lane if I want to. No. It says, like he's always done. He's following his same daily pattern. He always prays 3 times a day. And so he changes nothing. He remains consistent. The law's in force, but he doesn't change. He goes immediately to his home and he prays. And he's not sneaky about it. He leaves the window open, looking towards Jerusalem, looking towards the temple, looking towards that symbol of God's presence physically with his people. He's consistent. You may remember this. I think it's still, I haven't eaten one in a long time, but there's a frozen pizza brand. It was really popular in the late 80s and early 90s. It was called Tombstone. Tombstone frozen pizza. And they had commercials in the 80s where it would show cowboys have captured the cattle rustler or the horse thief or whatever he was, and they'd be just ready to string him up, and they'd say, what do you want on your tombstone? And he'd look at them with his, rustler and horse thief eyes and would say, pepperoni. And we need to see Daniel can't control what the people say about him. He can't control if they say he's a rustler or a horse thief. He can't control what people say about him. But what he can control is what statement his lifestyle is making. He can control what his actions are saying about him and about his God. So today, make the truest thing that can be put on your tombstone, the truest thing that can be said about you, is that you consistently do your best for God's glory, not your own. What do these sneaks do in verse 12? I want to put it in quotes. It's actually in quotes in my sermon. They catch him. They get him. They catch him. Don't they? They catch him. And they go, after they've caught him in this act, this horrible act of being consistently excellent, they go to Darius to reaffirm the law, to make sure Darius remembers what a law of Medes and Persians is. Because actually the law of the Medes and Persians is not infallible, and it's not unchangeable. If you remember the story of Esther and her husband Xerxes, you'll remember that Xerxes, who was also a Persian monarch, put a law in place that could not be revoked. A law that all the family of Mordecai was to be attacked and put to death on a certain day. And once he finds out that that includes his beautiful wife, what does he do? He makes an anti-law. He makes a law of protection for Esther and for her people. He makes a counter edict, a counter law against the Hebrews' murder. Darius could make a counter law. He could say, yes, whoever does this is thrown to the lions, but anyone who executes Daniel gets thrown to the lions too. He could do that. He could make a counter edict. But what did that do when Xerxes did that? It said Xerxes made a mistake. Whoops. Law of the Medes and Persians. You put your fire lane in the wrong place. You made a mistake. And Darius racks his brain. How can I save Daniel without looking like an idiot? How can I save Daniel without looking foolish? How can I save Daniel without admitting that I made a mistake? Because it's humiliating. It's a sign of weakness to admit that you are fallible. And when you're the ruler of the earth, you don't want to look foolish. And Darius doesn't want to look foolish. He's distressed, it tells us in verse 13. He's worried. But he can't find a way to save him without looking foolish. And we learn here something about Darius, that his reputation is more important to him than saving Daniel's life. His reputation at this point is more important to him than the truth. So he sends Daniel to die. Don't let this be you. People are going to talk about you. People are going to talk about you behind your back, and the record may never be set straight in your lifetime. But don't preserve your reputation by stooping to the level of liars. Don't protect your reputation at the cost of the truth. Don't let this be you. And we see this where we broke from our scripture reading, this scary thing. Daniel is thrown to the lions, verses 16 through 18. He's put in a lion's den. He's covered with stone. They seal it with double signets. Daniel has been effectively cut off from human help because of human lies. And you may be here today saying, exactly, that's what happens. Exactly. That's the problem. I can live consistently. I can be excellent. I can do my best. I can be trying to glorify God, but I'm still vulnerable. I'm vulnerable to dishonest people. I am sure that some people believed that lie that I was fired. Oh yeah, that Matt, he was worthless. I'm sure some people believe that. And I definitely lost that $70 for doing nothing other than being welcoming. I definitely lost that money. So yeah, we're in a bad place. We're going to need better protection from liars than just being consistent. And that's our third point today. Our final point. Jesus offers us the best defense. And Darius actually points us to that here. In his wimpiness, in his distress, with his trembly voice, he points us to the fact that Christ is the only defense. Look what he says. May your God, whom you serve continually. In other words, the God you serve consistently, may your God you're being consistent in front of deliver you, he says. And he goes home and frets, doesn't he? Because he doesn't know what's going to happen. He's worried that his friend Daniel is going to die because he's a wimp. He's worried. Sleep is not with him that night. And we see in verse 19, at the break of day, as soon as there's dawn, as soon as it's possible for him to rescue Daniel without breaking the law or looking foolish, he hustles to the lion's den. As soon as he can, he hustles to the den, and what does he find? Daniel's alive. Daniel's completely unharmed. Hungry lions didn't want to eat him. An astonishing power of God has been shown that Daniel is still alive, and Daniel describes it as an angel. God sent an angel, which in the Hebrew means messenger. That's the word for angel in Hebrew, a messenger. God sent a messenger to shut the lions' mouths. And they have not harmed me. Regardless of the sneaking and lying, Daniel is still alive, and we have to ask, why? What happened here? We have to ask why. Why is Daniel still alive? And Daniel actually answers it for us. He says, I'm alive because God has found me blameless in his sight. And that should actually slap us in the face. We shouldn't gloss over that's important. Blameless. Daniel's alive because he was found blameless? So that means Daniel's alive because he perfectly served God? Is that what this is saying? He's a perfect follower of God? Is that possible? No. That's not possible. Yes, he prayed to God 3 times a day, but there's no way every thought of his mind was on God's glory every waking second, because we humans don't have that kind of attention span. We don't. That's why TV shows are getting shorter and shorter and commercials are getting more and more. Because we need little 15 to 30 second slices, because that's how longer we can pay attention. There's no way Daniel was a perfect follower of God. Also, commercials are longer and more because they want to make more money. But anyway, there's no way Daniel was a perfect follower of God here. That can't be the blamelessness. So how is he blameless? Daniel's name, even though it's been changed by the Babylonians, he has a Hebrew name, and it is in fact Daniel. And in Hebrew, the name Daniel means God is my judge. That's what his name means. God is my judge. That's what his name means in Hebrew. How has Daniel been blameless? Well, what he's been doing is being consistent. He has lived to the best of his ability in faith. He's lived trusting God to be merciful. And I'm not making that up. That's right here in this passage. It says he's alive because he trusted in his God. So his consistent life of faith has made him declared blameless. He trusted God with his life. We have that language right here. Faith has made him blameless. What is faith? Faith is knowledge of who God is, becoming physical and emotional action. Daniel's faith wasn't just words, he lived it. He lived it in prayer on his knees with an open window for all to see. Daniel's faith was consistent. And these satraps, these sneaky liars, thought that Daniel's love of God would be his death. But it turns out that Daniel's faith actually brings him life. People can lie and sneak, but who rescued Daniel? Was it people? Was it Darius? Was it the satraps? Who rescued Daniel here? People or God? It was God. And you need to know today that God is your judge. And what he is judging is the presence of faith. He's looking at your life for the presence of faith. He wants to see if you trust God or not. Jesus' death is the ultimate example of the mercy that Daniel was trusting in, the mercy of God that Daniel was trusting in. And the amazing thing, as we talk more about Daniel's blamelessness, the amazing thing about Jesus' sacrifice is that it works backwards in time and forwards in time. Jesus' death was nearly 2,000 years ago, and it's still working. And Jesus' death worked backwards in time to cover Daniel as well. Daniel's faith in God was made effective through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And Daniel's lived out faith meant that, thanks to Jesus, that same faith made him blameless in God's sight. And if you today will place your faith in Jesus Christ, you will also be blameless before God. Who is your judge? People or God? Who is your judge? So if you know God is your judge, like Daniel's name tells us, then whose opinion actually matters? People or God's opinion? Whose opinion about you matters? I didn't need $70. What was I going to do with it? I was going to buy comic books and toys. I know exactly what I was going to do with it. I had plans. I didn't need toys or comic books. Faith is a much better possession than toys and comic books. And even more incredible than that, those members of the administration's lies about me could not prevent me from finding a truer calling, my real dream job right here and now. Faith is a greater possession. God is the judge, and his opinion is the only one that matters. No matter what people say about you behind your back, consistently live faith in Christ. He is the messenger. He is the messenger that God sent to shut the liars' mouths. Because Jesus' death says, yes, you are imperfect, but I died for you. Yes, you are imperfect, but I came to die for imperfect people. Jesus is the messenger to shut the liars' mouths. Verse 28, as we begin to close here, Daniel lives in his faith, continues to be consistent, and prospers through Darius and through another monarch, Cyrus. Daniel prospers till the end of his exile. Don't worry about what people say. Jesus' opinion of you is the only one that matters. Live in faith that he holds a high opinion of you. How can you know that? Because he holds such an opinion of you that he was willing to die so that you can be blameless. That's a big deal. And when you stand before the throne of judgment in eternity, it won't matter who said what lie, because Jesus will be right there with you saying, these are my people, and they are blameless. Verse 24. What happens to the liars? What happens to the sneaks? They get thrown in the den instead, don't they? They get eaten. Before they can even reach the bottom, their bones are broken. Brutal death that they face here. And we can be ready to say, oh, right. About time liars got what they deserved. I got some people that lied about me, talked about me behind my back, and I'd love to feed them some lions. All right. It's about time the liars got what's coming to them. But it's not just the satraps. It's not just the sneaks. It's not just the liars. It's their whole families. Their children. Their wives thrown in with them and eaten. Their bones broken before they reach the bottom. This is brutal. And we've said this before. Sin doesn't just damage the ones doing the sin. It's like throwing a stone into a pond. There are ripple effects. Sin affects those on the sidelines. Sin damages families. Sin damages spouses. See, this judgment here on the satraps for liars to get what they deserve is not something to celebrate. Grieve for any who would honor themselves instead of God, and be miserable over all those their lies hurt on the sidelines. The very end here, Darius uses his power. His tone is shifted from one of uncertainty about whether or not God can save to one of total certainty. And he makes a new law proclaiming that God is the one who answers prayers. So the bottom line today, faith in Christ is your best defense. Don't worry about what liars say. Use your consistent life to proclaim that God alone is your truth in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ.